what's up guys? My name's Dylan Johnson from SA Soccer Mag. It is a international break again, so I'm back to do an episode while Ollie and the MoneyMan focus on the Rugby World Cup again. I'm just going to go through the fixtures from Gameweek 8, just go through some of the results and a few talking points from each. Overall, it was a bit of a standard weekend. I think our predictions from last week weren't too great. But yeah, let's get into it. So the first game of the weekend was Luton versus Spurs. And taking from that game, I think, first half was pretty even. Luton actually threatened quite a bit. And one thing that I noticed from the game was I think we haven't given Luton a lot of credit this season for defensively or in general. But Spurs really struggled to get ahead in that game. I think first half they should have scored a couple. Richarlison missed two pretty big chances. But other than that, Luton were always dangerous on the counter and they weren't easy to play against. I think one thing that was also very refreshing from that game was Basuma's red card. Obviously, I don't like when players get red carded, but I think that's the first time I can remember a player has received a red card for a second yellow for simulation. And we've always wanted refs to crack down on simulation in general, and I honestly can't count the amount of times a player's been on a yellow card and gone down too easily and then avoided a red. So, if refs are going to be harsh, there's been a lot of red cards this season. That's one I don't really mind. Mickey van der Ven scored the goal, his first goal for Spurs, and I think the overall narrative we can take from that game is that Spurs, even if they aren't creating a lot of chances, they're difficult to beat now and they're finding a way, which is, good. They sit top of the table on 20 points. Moving on to the next game, Burnley versus Chelsea. And I think Chelsea are starting to, build a bit of a run here. They are really starting to express themselves. But even though they went 1-0 down against Burnley, I think this season already we've seen them go 1-0 down and we think, it's game over already. But I must say Raheem Sterling is really impressing me right now. I think he's playing really well. He's taking games with a scruff of the neck and he wants to create chances. He wants to score goals. And he's been one of the catalysts, I think. And I think Cole Palmer, he played really well. I know he got his first goal for Chelsea, but overall he's looking really good. I think there's some criticism about the fee they paid, but I think naturally in this current market, a young, promising English midfielder is going to be expensive, especially from a direct rival like Manchester City. But overall, Jackson got on the score sheet as well, which is a huge positive. So I think Chelsea they're at least making progress in the right direction. I know they're still lower in the table than they want to be, but you're starting to see what direction they're moving. From Burnley's point of view, I think they're in serious trouble now. I know they beat Luton during the week last week, but they're conceding way too many goals. I think offensively they are very positive. They create a lot of chances and they are scoring goals, but defensively they are way too open. They're conceding a lot of goals. They're conceding silly goals, and I think they need to start. I'm not saying they need to change the way they play, but they need to start thinking about the other end of the pitch, not just offensively right now. Moving on, we have Everton versus Bournemouth. And Everton are kind of starting to, they make me look like a fool every week. One week I predict they're going to lose and they win. One week I predict they win and they lose. But this week, I was really surprised with them winning 3-0 against Bournemouth. I think similar to their Brentford win, that going into this game, Everton, they're really inconsistent and their defence has not been great at all this season. Now they face Bournemouth, who also haven't gotten a lot of results, but have been, causing teams problems. And now they host Bournemouth and they score 3 unanswered goals. So Everton are a difficult one to back at the moment. They had 25 shots against Bournemouth. It seems that Sean Dyche has, changed the way they're attacking because they are actually creating chances now. I think it took them 3 or 4 games to score the first goal of the season. Moving on to, I'm not going to spend much time on this one. Fulham versus Sheffield. This is a pretty boring game. I think first half there wasn't many chances at all. Second half, 2 own goals, one from Sheffield, one from Fulham. Fulham won 3-1, but I wouldn't take much from this game. I think Sheffield are terrible. I think Luton have been getting a lot of attention as the worst team in the league, but I think Sheffield are very much contending with them for that. I think they've got the worst defence in the league this season. I think they've conceded 22 goals already this season. They have a minus 16 goal difference. That there's no way that they're going to stay up if they keep conceding goals like they are. Now for the first big game of the weekend, we have Man United versus Brentford. And, United kind of stole a win on this occasion. But Brentford, I think they'll be very disappointed. They scored relatively early and they did pretty well to keep United out. I think United, they're really struggling to create consistent, attacking problems for the teams they play against. They are struggling with their chemistry up front. I think I mentioned it last week. And the fact that Scott McTominay has to come off the bench, a player who doesn't really score goals, and score 2 goals in extra time to win it, I think it would have been 4 defeats in a row at Old Trafford or something like that if they hadn't gotten those 2 goals from Scott McTominay. It's a win and you take it and you move on. But if you're looking at it, they really are still struggling. I think looking at Andre Onana, and I think he's a great goalkeeper. Obviously, everyone knows he's great with his feet. But the goal that Brentford scored, he gets a hand to it. I think he can do better. I think over the past couple of weeks, he's letting himself down with the goals he's letting in. I think, when you're a defender and you look at your goalkeeper and he's making mistakes and letting goals in that, you look back and David De Gea doesn't let those. Okay, he makes mistakes, but David De Gea was a shot stopper. I think I'm not saying you ask questions of the goalkeeper because I think he's a great goalkeeper, but that is a problem that, he needs to start saving goals, not letting in 50-50s. Moving on to the next game. We have Crystal Palace versus Forest, and I'm not going to spend much time on this one at all. I think there were 7 shots on target throughout the whole game, 0-0, pretty straightforward. Both teams are going to move on to next week after the international break, and really isn't much to take from this game. Both teams are probably happy with the draw, get points and move on. Now, I think this is probably the second biggest game of the weekend, Brighton versus Liverpool. And 2 teams that, started the season, I didn't think Liverpool would make top 4, but now they really are. They're a lot better side than I think we gave them credit for. Brighton as well, they've lost a couple games, but they are still the top scorers in the league this season. And, I thought that this game was probably one of the most exciting draws I've seen in a while. For the first half an hour, Brighton completely dominated. I think Simon Adingra was insane. He really deserved his goal, even though it was a Liverpool mistake. I think he played really well in that opening half an hour, and Liverpool couldn't really build any sort of attacking platform. I think Alisson, Klopp tried something with Alisson coming very high up to play a part in the build-up. And, for the first half an hour, 35 minutes, it was Alisson, Van Dijk, Alisson, Matip. It was kind of just shifting across those 3. Alisson sitting, putting his studs on the ball for long periods of time waiting, but Brighton wouldn't take the bait. But after they went 1-0 down, I think Liverpool responded well. The first goal was a great team move. I think the one-touch passes between Salah, Szoboszlai, could have been Elliott as well, and Nunez to leave it. I thought that was really good. Then the penalty to go 2-1 up, I think it is a penalty. You can't grab a player's shirt when you're in the box. And people are calling for a red card because he was, the last defender. Szoboszlai had gotten past the keeper. But like I said earlier in the episode, I don't like it when players get red cards. I don't want a game to be ruined over a questionable red card. I'd rather, let him stay on and see how the game goes. Second half, I think Liverpool settled into the game really well. They started controlling the game. Their press started working really well. Salah up top of Nunez was, I've never seen Lewis Dunk misplace as many passes into the midfield as he did against Liverpool. I think for the first goal and even the second goal, he misplaced 2 passes into the midfield and Liverpool's press was right there to get the ball straight away. And then I think what changed the game in Brighton's favour is that Trent actually locked up Matoma for the whole game. I think for the 70, 75 minutes Trent was on Matoma, I think they probably had 4 or 5 duels and Trent came out on top every single time. And Matoma really had no space. He didn't really create many chances. He didn't have much, he didn't really drive into the box as much as he usually does. And when Klopp took Trent off, I don't know if it's because of fitness, I don't know if it's because he's been injured for a while, but when Gomez came on, who I would view as a more stable defender, Matoma really started cooking. I think he made Gomez about 2 or 3 times. The second goal they scored was because Gomez fouled Matoma. So I think that was the difference, because up until that point, Liverpool they were defending Brighton well. I think overall from that game, a fair result. Both teams dominated for a certain period of time. Both teams created a lot of chances. And I think both teams are really pushing for the top 4. And I think overall it's just a fair result. Next game, we have West Ham versus Newcastle. And this is an interesting one because we have Newcastle who have been on a very good run of form. And we have West Ham who are kind of I'm not going to say the giant killers of the season, but the team that's definitely overperforming considering their squad. And West Ham, they did what they did in the first half, what they classically do. They sit back and they wait on the counter. They scored. Thomas Suchek scored the first goal, and then for the rest of the first half, Newcastle, I think, dominated possession, but couldn't break through. Then second half, they started to, get settled and start creating more chances. And then Isak, he scored 2 and he should have had 3. I think he hit the left post. I think he scored 2 goals in 5 minutes and he could have scored a third within the next 5. So West Ham, I think Newcastle are probably going to be pretty upset they didn't win that one. West Ham are going to be happy with the point though, 100%. I think for them, they know that Newcastle are a better team. And considering Newcastle just beat PSG 4-1, I think they're going to be upset that they didn't really capitalize on the form that they have at the moment. Wolves versus Aston Villa. I think not much to say about this game other than there were 12 minutes of added time at the end. Hwang scored the first and Watkins, I think, Pau Torres scored straight afterwards. But it was a pretty even game on all fronts. I think Villa had about 53% possession and they had one more shot on target. But overall, wasn't really much separating the team. Ollie Watkins hit the post, I think, in like the 102nd minute, as the ref blew his whistle. Similar to the Palace Forest one, I think Villa may be disappointed they didn't get the 3 points here, but I think both teams will move on. Not much to say about that. And now the big game of the weekend, Arsenal versus Man City. And I thought this game was, it was a very close game. I think if that game ends 0-0, both sets of fans understand that, that people are saying it was a chess game. The battles in that game, there was a very small margin to win. And I think to give Arsenal credit, that was probably one of the bluntest attacking displays from Man City I've seen under Pep Guardiola. I think one shot on target throughout the 90 minutes. Haaland had 0 expected goals. And I think now watching that game, you realize how much they're starting to miss Kevin De Bruyne. And obviously they missed Rodri. I think we said last week, Rodri in these big games, this is his bread and butter. This is what he does. He scores big goals in these games. He makes 5 or 6 challenges to stop goals. And those are the 2 players right now that they desperately need back. I think Phil Foden and Alvarez and, Kovacic, they've come in and they have been scoring goals. They've been creating goals. But Kevin De Bruyne does it all, and his relationship with Haaland is irreplaceable. And I think we've seen, especially in the past couple of weeks, since they've had this downturn of form, where the other creative players just can't do what Kevin De Bruyne does. And Phil Foden, as much as he's been playing well, he isn't the same creative player as De Bruyne. He isn't going to put those, long balls through for Haaland at the back post, or, his first instinct isn't to look up the same way Kevin De Bruyne's is. But from Arsenal's point of view, I think their defence deserves all the credit. I think William Saliba and Gabriel were insane. To limit Man City to 1 shot on target, 4 shots at goal for 90 minutes is already a great achievement. And I think this is the second or third time now that Saliba has locked up Haaland. And looking at their battle, it's, a ball goes long in behind for Haaland. He may have a couple meters head start, but Saliba's there to catch up. He's got the pace. They fight physically. Saliba's strong enough to cope with Haaland's strength. In the air, Haaland doesn't dominate as much as you'd think. I think Saliba's a very complete defender. And if he gets injured, it's almost like Kevin De Bruyne getting injured for Man City. That's, it's almost game over. If I look at the top of the table now, Spurs and Arsenal both tied on 20 points at the top. I think both of these teams are doing really well, but I think Man City, they're on 19 points I think they're on 18 points. I still think they win the title because we've seen City in this situation so many times before. I think exactly almost a year ago today, last season, when City went through a similar rough patch, Haaland wasn't scoring freely. They were losing games. Everyone was questioning, why did you sign Haaland? You didn't need Haaland. Was he the right fit? Is Kevin De Bruyne still at his best? Can they really retain the title? And then after this bumpy patch, they went on and they comfortably, I wouldn't say they comfortably won the league, but, they bounced back and they won the treble. Because City, they have this thing about them where they can lose 3 or 4 games or drop points in 3 or 4 games, but then they can win the next 15 in a row. So I wouldn't rule City out just yet. Because when Kevin De Bruyne comes back, even when Rodri comes back from a suspension, I think next week, they already will be a way better side. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say today. Thanks for watching, guys, and see you guys next week when the international break's finished. Cheers.